Good morning and welcome to those of you who are listening on both the Presence podcast and the Love Thy Number podcast. It is Doug and Danae, 2 D's in a pod cast.
Very clever.
Get it?
Yes, very clever on this. Another beautiful day in Hotlanta.
It's officially, well, it's not officially summertime, but
Pretty darn close.
we think it is.
After Memorial Day, I think that's what everyone says.
Yes.
Okay, it's summer. And then also I go by the simple rule of thumb of, man, it's hot.
Yes, and welcome to Hot in Atlanta.
Hotlanta.
Oh, that just showed our age. Anyway, okay, we are wrapping up our 4-part series on the deceitfulness of good. And today, we're going to go a little deeper and go to a little deeper explanation of the type 7 and type 9 because these are our types.
They're our numbers.
And we know them intimately.
Yes, we do.
Yes. So we're going to do a fun twist on this, and I'm going to talk about the passion of type 9, and I'm going to let Doug do type 7. So we may have to edit this one.
Yeah, something tells me it'll be a give and take back and forth all the way through.
I know,
Yeah,
yes, because we have done this for years. We have had this conversation about each of our types and how we manifest our behaviors.
And it's probably because our marriage is unique. I mean, we've had, over the last 23, going on 24 years now, we've had situations come up in our lives. And probably in most marriages, they don't have that. Like we've had things that come up, or sometimes we've even disagreed, or sometimes things haven't seemed to go well.
I hate to admit that.
And so I just hope this is applicable to people when they're thinking about, why do I need to know the Enneagram? Because I already know tons of Bible verses, and I already know eschatology for the presence people, and I know that. Why do I need to know the Enneagram?
Exactly.
And they probably don't. I mean, they may never have relationship issues with either their marriage or their children or friends or people at work or whatever. And if you're a person that doesn't have any problems like that,
then bye.
Then you don't need this podcast. But, we've used it because for us, it has been an immense help in our relationship.
Yeah. I hope we didn't just fall off that pedestal of, Doug and Danae have challenges. And on that note, we're going to say, let's talk about those challenges.
Yeah.
And let's kind of be honest. Kind of be.
Yeah.
Like it's rare. So here we go. Let's open up about this and dive into type 9. And so, again, through this whole series, we've said there are some words that kind of conjure up, certain images, and it's like, the Enneagram has its own language. And so when it comes to the passion of a type 9, it's called sloth.
Boo.
Do you remember that Geico commercial?
Yes, it's hilarious.
With the sloth.
There's a sloth at a whiteboard.
Yeah, they're playing like Pictionary.
Pictionary, yeah.
Yeah. And
the sloth is very, very slowly drawing a straight line down the board, just ever so slowly. And they're screaming out guesses of what he's trying to draw.
Straight line. But that's the image. When you hear sloth, it just, makes you think, oh, okay, well, all 9s must be very slow moving. And it's so not true. Just like all type 7s are not outgoing. Not all of us. There's actually some introverted type 7s.
Yeah, I just haven't met any.
Well, it's not me. Yeah. So I've heard.
Not the one I know. So anyway.
So again, this is the danger of associating behavior with a type. It's what we've said. It's what's behind the action that matters. And so we're going to talk about our fears and motivations and the driving force behind these behaviors. So what is that fear that manifests the passion? Which again, let me remind you, we're using the word passion as internal suffering.
Right.
So what is that?
Yep.
All right. For type 9s, the suffering is a fear of losing connection, of being abandoned, losing relationship.
Yep.
So why sloth? What does that mean in Enneagram language? Well, It's actually a slowness and a falling asleep, if you will, to your own abilities, your own desires, your own needs and worth. And nines end up merging with each other's a lot of times. And so they are not quick to put their own desires first. So they are slow to act in that way, as opposed to the sevens who are often very quick to react.
Right.
You might have noticed.
But it's because we're always looking outwardly at what the situation is, including all the people they're in, and what is the state of that situation. So we're not looking at ourselves.
Right.
We're looking outwardly at the situation in the family, at the situation with either marriage or kids, or the situation at work. We're constantly looking at the situation and other people in it.
And that just sounds so good. You're thinking of others first. Type nines are called, many times, they're called the peacemakers. Why?
Yep.
Why did they get that label? Because they are striving to maintain peace.
Yes.
Almost at all costs. Not just outward, but internally. So they've got this, it's a peace of mind and peaceful environment. Do not mess with my everything's just nice and calm.
We don't like surprises.
Well, I found that out too.
We don't like things that come out of left field because that ruins our peace. And we're more reactionary to that than your average person, probably. So, yes, the don't rock the boat, peace. And what do I need to do? What do I need to do to ensure that there is peace in this situation wherever I am?
So if you're called the peacemaker,
Yeah.
that in itself implies I am the one.
Yes, I make the peace.
I am the one. And this is where we've been saying all along with the other numbers, I am the one. Not it's something that is a gift of mine, but I become the one
Yeah.
who makes the peace.
Yes.
And like you're the new sheriff in town.
That's
no. So again, oftentimes this attempt at having a peaceful internal and external environment, it means you avoid conflict at all cost. And so while that seems like a good thing, it's often just an attempt to keep, and I wish you could see me doing quotes, it's just an attempt to keep peace. But what is that? What is what we see on the external as peace? And I want to talk about this because so many times in the Enneagram world, we see peace and harmony.
Yeah.
Nines are all about peace and harmony, like they're one and the same, but they're not. And so what we often think about when we say, well, they just want peace, what I think it means is no conflict.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think there's a tendency to go along, just, settle for, again, no conflict. So we think we're going to achieve harmony. But let's talk about what no conflict is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a good example over in the Middle East.
Very hot topic again. It comes on and off. But yeah, I love your ideas on this.
Well, because like if you look over in the Middle East, they'll have the ceasefire.
Yeah.
And,
So there's no conflict in that sense,
Thank
right?
you. Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
But no conflict does not mean that you're living in harmony.
No.
And what I love is, like in music, harmony is defined as the combination of simultaneously played sounds. So here we go. Harmony requires more than one note.
Yes.
So if any person is denying their own voice, it doesn't produce harmony. It it just prevents screeching.
Yes, exactly. And really, how many times have you found out that couples maybe are even getting a divorce, or there's a big problem in a marriage or a relationship, and you never knew it because on the surface there was no conflict.
Yes.
There was no conflict. Did they have peace in their relationship? Absolutely not. This phrase, living quiet lives of desperation.
Right.
There is beneath the surface, when your whole point is to just not have conflict, you don't address the issue. You don't address the problem. You constantly find a way to avoid an unpleasant conversation. You don't want to, there might be something that's upsetting to your spouse or your children or whatever. So what you do, you avoid it. You avoid the conflict. You don't address it because that is seemingly
a good thing.
Right, seemingly a good thing, and there's no conflict, and we're all at peace, and no one's yelling in the house, no one's upset with each other, we're not angry with each other, and so on and so forth. And that starts you down a road that's going to have really rough consequences for what's available to you and what you could have in life.
For sure. Because this is not harmony, and this is not, truly, it's not even a relationship.
Right.
Because if you have denied your voice at the expense of, expressing what your true desires are in an attempt to do what looks good on the outside, that's the deceitfulness.
And one other thing that I would say to that, too, is as a peacemaker in a family, let's just use that as an example, you will find yourself trying to achieve peace between two people outside yourself. Mm-hmm. So there's conflicts between mom and daughter, mom and son, or kids or whatever. And so because you are the peacemaker, you take it upon yourself to be the middleman. You take it upon yourself. And what happens in the family is that over time, family members go through you because you have set yourself up as the middleman, so that rather than mom and daughter sitting down face to face, or mom and son, or whatever the situation in the family is, and dealing directly with each other, going directly to each other, which is a universal principle. You even find it in the biblical principle of going to the person directly. The peacemaker can insert themselves and become a middleman and take responsibility for their conflict.
Exactly, and keeping them at bay.
Yes.
So I won't even let them associate with each other, just so there's no conflict. And that can often turn out to be, well, if you're in therapy, it's called triangling.
Yes, triangling.
And it often leads to, can lead to codependency.
Yes, and we'll talk about that as well here in a minute. All these things that seem to be good, keeping peace in the home, also have that underbelly, that underside of deceitfulness.
Yeah.
And so we'll get to that in a second here.
Also, and so I want to also reiterate, we've said this all along. It's from the beginning of this, the Carl Jung quote,
Yes.
What you resist persists and grows stronger. So when you are living in a constant denying of who you are and your voice and that you matter, that begins to build resentment over time.
Sure.
And, then you sit there and people think, what's wrong? Why is he so quiet? What's wrong? Well, on the outside, you might see that, no, I'm just letting everybody else do their thing. But you are so, so very needed. I can tell you, it's just awesome being married to a 9. I love being married to you. But you have some strong feelings.
Of course. I am a human.
Yes. And when they just pile up after a while.
Right.
Well,
then the 9 is prone to the anger and the blow up out of nowhere. Okay, then what happens? Well, I've blown my image because why? Well, what's the image of Doug? What's the image of Dad? What's the image of Papaw? What's the image of whatever? It is this constant, no conflict, always in control, everything's cool, no, there aren't any problems, there won't be any problems, I'll make sure there's no problems. That's the role you take on. Then if you get angry, if you have a day where you're really upset, everyone's like, what?
Oh.
It freaks them out. It freaks people out until they get to know you.
Until they oh, he does have an opinion.
And now you are kind of aware of that. This is not a surprise to you.
No, and it's actually, and I'm going to tell you, it took some time for us to get to this place where, our relationship is not going to fall apart. In fact, now we understand each other better. So again, since we're talking about the deceitfulness of good, and we could go on and on about this a lot, but I want to just ask again, how can it not be good to be so good at making everyone else feel good?
Yes. And one final thing that you did allude to here a few minutes ago is the issue of codependency, and I'll throw that one in as well. That is, if you're having difficulty with someone in the family, or if you're raising children, and you're trying to keep conflict out of the family situation, rather than addressing the conflict and having hard discussions and holding all kids equally accountable or whatever the situation is, if you are avoiding conflict, that can lead to codependency, where you're trying to pacify. And as you begin to pacify, the therapist will say that's enabling. And so rather than helping the child by avoiding conflict, by avoiding confrontation, by avoiding calling out what is a situation that does call for change, you become a codependent that's constantly, again, watching everything that whoever you're codependent with, a spouse, a child, whoever it is, you're constantly making sure that whenever there's a situation in their life, you're the one that's going to solve their conflict. You're the one that's going to make it okay for them. And they, as if they are not human beings who have every right to fall on their face, every right to face their troubles, and every right to figure it out for themselves.
That's exactly the deceitfulness of good. So we are I guess we're deceived into believing our good works equal being loved.
Right.
And that's the ultimate. That's why.
That's why we do what we do.
That's why we do what we do. But when a 9 faces their passion, that internal suffering, which has only done the opposite. It has led to anything but peace inside your own world. You're like that duck out swimming on the lake.
Good example.
Just very calm, floating along. But underneath, there's a lot going on.
Yes.
So when they do speak up, when you do understand, not just say, okay, I see that my presence matters. No, when you believe it, when 9s understand the gift of what they have in the world is needed and can only be accomplished when you say, I want my voice to be heard.
Yes.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. When
things don't fall apart, they come together.
Right, because you put things in their proper context. This, again, is going back to why the Enneagram has been such a tremendous tool. But it's a scary thing. We had someone in a week ago who was talking about the Enneagram with us, who came in to talk about presence with us. And they were saying that when they got into the Enneagram, it was like they were exposed. And who wants to do that? You feel ashamed, or you feel, oh my gosh, now everybody knows my weakness, or, oh, this is a terrible thing, right? This is the instinctive self trying to protect identity.
Oh, yeah.
As opposed to embracing the Enneagram and looking for the areas in your life that can cause you problems.
You kind of mentioned anger. And this is something that we'll talk about in the future. But when we get to really understanding the depth of the Enneagram, anger is at the heart of what the Type 9, that's their core fear.
Right.
Or their core.
Yes.
Is
you're trying to avoid it.
Right. Anger. And you're like, 9s?
And
How
what,
do 9s
and
have
what,
anger as a...
I resist. So what does it do?
It persists. It builds. So later we can talk about that, but we're just trying to wrap up the deceitfulness of good on this one because there's a lot we could talk about on all of this. So
Yes. So now we got the 7,
why
and
don't
that's
we move to the 7s?
I really enjoy talking about the weaknesses of a 7. I don't know why it is. I don't like the 9 subject that much, but the 7, now I like that.
Well, it was hard
No,
to find a weakness, wasn't it?
It
I mean,
was.
we thought and thought, and it's like, I don't know.
It was, and I thought about, as a 9, I thought, well, if I do talk about the weaknesses of a 7, how's that going to cause pain and conflict and a problem in my life? So basically, I just looked at it very carefully. 7s don't have any weaknesses.
And so
that's what I want to say. And that concludes the podcast. That's the way a 9 would do the podcast.
Oh,
It would
my
be to
gosh.
say, no, my wife doesn't really have. And what is the saying that all guys know? If mama's happy.
Everybody happy.
And so if you're a 9, oh my gosh, your whole life is about making sure mama's happy if you're a 9. Now, this is where you know, if you're an 8, you do a healthy thing and you have no problem in saying, wait a minute, this is what I feel, this is what I think. But here's what's weird to me. These words you've got, right?
Right.
When I saw the Enneagram word that's typically used for 7, it was like, what in the world? The passion. What the passion of, according to the Enneagram, is the word gluttony. And I thought, that should be me, you know, because the joke about 9s is we like to use food to pacify ourselves and have peace. We like snacks. And we like to rest and we like naps. That's where the sloth meme comes in and we get abused badly as 9s. But gluttony for a 7, unpack that a little bit, because that passion word, what gluttony means, unpack that, and I'll jump right in on top of what I've observed of you in you as well. But you're the Enneagram expert, so unpack the definition a little bit for us.
Well, first of all, I have to say, y'all, you've got to give us kudos, because when we were talking about how we were going to do this, at first, naturally, it was like, okay, well, you do your type and I'll do mine.
Right.
I was like, no, let's do each other's.
Yeah.
And, so, yeah, this was an interesting one to think about, discuss, which we've done, again, ad nauseum. But, again, there's one of those words, gluttony. So you develop, you conjure up an image of, wow, they've just, they must have an insatiable appetite. And, on certain things, I do. I love a good pie. Mm-hmm. I love a glass or 4 of Chardonnay. I mean, a glass or 2 of Chardonnay now and then.
And in fact, you could name a number of things you enjoy. And isn't that the point?
Oh, that's good. And that is the point. That's the point right here. So when we say, why is gluttony assigned to a type 7? Well, it's because we have this almost insatiable craving to experience all the things.
Yes.
So it's this hunger for, it might be food. That may be one, but it's certainly not top on the list. It's that hunger for experiencing life, for the stimulation of experience and meals, conversation, adventures, whatever. It's this endless capacity that we have for new and exciting. And that's the thing right there. Oh, something new. And so when we are in an unconscious state, we kind of are running on autopilot. And that you've seen those memes before. I want to do all the things.
Yes.
Well, that's a type 7.
Yeah, exactly right. And it could be ideas about that you're thinking, oh, here's 100 different things I could do to make a living. Here's 100 different ways I could approach this or do that. Let's throw a party. I need to now become involved in cleaning the garage out. And so it's just like all of the ideas. And that's great. But again, when we get behind the 7, though, what is it that drives that constant need for more things and more things and more things? What is it that's driving the 7 to do that?
Oh, we could unpack a lot in that one.
Yeah.
But the constant need to keep moving keeps us from ever having to be in a situation where there might be pain involved.
There you go.
Pain and suffering.
Yes.
And so, honestly, in our most unhealthy times, we do become bored. That's one thing that sevens, that FOMO, as they say, fear of missing out. And to experience, like you and I have talked about before, I want to go to all the restaurants.
Yes.
And you're very content with the one that we know.
That I know works.
That you know works. There will
and
be
I
no
don't
surprises.
Want to go, exactly. I won't get that surprise. That ruins my peace. And so that's not exciting to me, but it is to you.
It's very exciting. We could go through that
Sure.
a lot.
Right.
But sevens are just kind of known for being the ones who bring all the excitement and the joy. And
absolutely. Life of the party, a lot of fun to be around. Now, on the other side of that, if I were a 4 and I had I won't say talent, I had within me a great capacity for understanding the grief that can come with life, the sorrow that can come from life, and I'm really, as a 4, more apt to be in touch with all of my emotions, including the ones that we typically say are not emotions we want, like grief and pain and even depression or things like that. What would the 7's reaction to that be? An unhealthy reaction to that?
Well, we would begin to fill our life with more and more adventures, more and more ideas.
Yes.
And that's
and you'd look at me and say, what? If I was the 4.
Why do you...
Get over it.
Oh, I would not.
Move on.
I used to.
I'm just saying. No, you wouldn't. No, you would never say that today.
No.
But what I'm saying is, what you're thinking as a 7 is just how to move on to the next step. And let's keep rolling. And let's get past this.
Right, because who wants to be...
In grief.
In grief, right.
Or any kind of pain or suffering or whatever.
And I have said this before on other podcasts. Understanding what grief... my attempt to keep grief out of my life was my invitation into and my first experience with the Enneagram.
Mm-hmm.
And when I understood, oh my gosh, this is just a way to avoid pain.
Mm-hmm.
So we're constantly looking to the future.
Yeah, yeah.
And the good thing is we have a lot of great ideas.
Oh, yes. I mean, again, all numbers have the great side to them, and they have the deceitful side to them that can take us into places of dysfunction and pain of our own.
But again, here's the deceitfulness of this.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
When I try to avoid pain and sadness at all cost, then I take it upon myself to be the one. And again, here we go. Mm-hmm. I'm the one who provides joy and happiness. I am the positive, energetic, full of ideas and plans for the future type person.
Yep.
It's me.
Yes.
And if you'll stick with me, then, we'll just run away from anything that's painful and we'll just find another fun thing to do. That's very shallow.
Sure.
But that is the deceitfulness of being the one who says, oh, yeah, it's up to me to bring joy and happiness. And the only way to do that is to avoid the other side of the coin.
Yeah. And again, what you're doing in this series, your idea was to paint a real basic overview. And you've started with the numbers. And of course, all of these go so much deeper than that. There's so many more elements to the Enneagram than this, but this is like the 30,000-foot overview of it all.
Oh, of just one portion of it all.
Yes, just one portion of it, yeah.
We're just looking at what each of us has inside of us that looks so good. This goes back to in the biblical narrative, and we are not going to go into depth right now, but the deceitfulness of good started in the garden.
Right, exactly.
And so
human nature. That's what that narrative is talking about, is what our human nature is and what our temptations, what we're tempted to do, because we think that's a great thing. Basically, at the end of the day, a great thing to ensure my survival, the survival of the situation, the family, my identity, that we're doing it because we think this will ensure survival in some form or fashion.
Exactly. And so if I find myself in a place where I'm not running from grief, I'm not running from sadness, then I'm not the one who's taken upon myself to be the joy maker, to be the energy person. And it freaks people out.
The kids, for example, because everybody knows how mom is. Joyful, fun, party. She's the one that has all the events at the house, whatever. That's now your role. That's the role you play in the family. So you can't be anything other than that.
At first.
At first. That's what I'm saying. I'm putting it out in generic form for anybody listening out there. Those are the ways it began.
And it's like, oh, this must be bad. This must be a horrible thing. Mom is sad.
Yes.
And so they began to or not just my kids, or not just our family, people that you know in any group environment. When you step out of your quote role, what you've assigned yourself to be, then people are like when you throw gas on the ants, which I love to do. No, I'm kidding.
That was not true.
Sorry, no, but they scatter. They just scatter because things are not the way they were. So what I'm saying is, what looks so good to be that person? I mean, for Pete's sake, who doesn't want to just be positive and be around somebody who's positive all the time?
Yes.
Well, what happens is it seems so good, actually, that, and I'm going to say this, my defense mechanism, which is a whole other topic, but it insists that I run into a future, right?
Yes.
So 7s are very future-oriented. And so, and here's...
Looking forward to something.
Looking forward. And boy, we get rewarded for being visionaries, for planning for the future. But my defense mechanism comes in and says, guess what? If you keep looking to the future, if you keep running forward, there's no pain there.
Right.
And you don't have to deal with any pain.
Right.
And ultimately, this is our instinct that says, if you stop and you sit here and you crash and you deal with this grief and sorrow, you'll just be destroyed.
Yes.
That's what will happen.
There you go. It's survival. Just goes right back to the same thing.
And so, yes, there is a way for us to have both sides of this. In fact, if you just have all happiness and joy, you're missing half of life.
That's right.
And that seems very hard to understand and accept.
Just like conflict is very hard for a peacemaker to understand, you're missing half of life.
Yes, you're missing your full value. And so am I.
Yeah.
Because what happens is you just teach people that if you're ever in grief, well, I'm not someone you can count on.
That's right.
I can come to you when I want to be happy.
Right.
And what a horrible thing, because there's not a single person on this planet who doesn't have grief and sorrow.
And we need empathy from others who are willing to step into their grief experiences with us.
So this is, again, a quick overview. I know we got to go into it a little bit more personally about our own. But I'm going to say this, honestly. When you ask a type 9, where do they want to go for dinner? And they say they don't care. They really don't.
Well, or they subjugate that which they really care for because they're thinking that the other person probably wants to go someplace different. But inside, the 9 is thinking, I want to go where we always go because I really like that place. And therein lies the whole point.
There we go. So
go ahead.
I hope this makes sense and that it's given you an opportunity to just look at your own behavior because it's
Or be intrigued at the very least. Again, what you're doing is not even a full introduction to this. People would really need to get a real good, solid introduction to these numbers to really begin to get into it in more depth. This is just to basically throw it out and show some real high-level concepts so that if people are interested, they can pursue the Enneagram further, which really brings us to the work that you've been doing for some time now and an idea that you had. Why don't you go into that just for a sec?
Well, if you're listening to this on the Love Thy Number podcast, you're like, it's why we're listening to your podcast, because we are interested and have been interested in the Enneagram. Again, for those of you, though, that are listening from the presence side, and this may be or may not be new to you. You may have just heard about it, been, curious. It's like, oh, yeah, it's a personality type thing. Like back in the day when you had, are you a golden retriever or an otter?
Right.
And not to slam Myers-Briggs, but again, Myers-Briggs concentrates a lot on behaviors. So that's why looking at a behavior and assigning, a type to a person is wrong, because in the Enneagram, it goes behind the behavior and says, what are the motives? What is your passion? What is your fear? And so, we've been doing this a long time personally, and you've been very deep into the spiral, which we've talked about as the collective growth process. But you have used the concept of Rosetta Stone in the presence work, and why we see that. And I love the Rosetta Stone. Of course, that's the thing when you get to looking at something, it's like, oh, the whole history behind it is fascinating. But the Rosetta Stone actually had a decree written on it, and it really doesn't matter what the decree was. The point is, it was written in three different scripts, which, if you're looking at it, could be like three different languages. And so it was written in the native Egyptian script that was used for daily purposes, like the language of the regular people, common people. And it was written in a language that spoke to the administration, the rulers of Egypt. And then there was, what was the third one for the people? Oh, and then the priests, or the priests, I think. Point was, it helped. They were able to see the same decree. It was the same words, but it was basically three different languages, and they began to understand what each other was saying. That's what I see the Enneagram and the spiral as. It helps us to understand that we all have common ways of existing in the world. We are one human family, but we see the world from different perspectives. And each type has something behind the way that we see them on the outside that is a language all their own. And we each have this language, a home base, a native language, as we may say. So what we have thought is, why don't we, from the presence perspective, just have like a 2-week Zoom session where we actually go through the types, each one, and it's awesome. I've been through enough workshops to sit in them and go, oh my gosh, I know that about me. I didn't know anybody else knew that about me. And the more you listen, it's like, oh, well, that's my dad. No wonder my dad had this way of being. We've talked about your dad, and it's like, oh my gosh, no wonder he could study in ways that most people cannot dig into in depth. So I'm going to do this for the presence audience. We're just going to do a couple-week Zoom session. And in fact, I don't know who's interested from this audience. So I'm going to send out a survey. It'll be very short. Basically, it's like, yes, I'm interested. No, I'm not. To see when we might do this, who might be interested in just committing to a 2-week, 1 hour each session, to just open our eyes and our hearts to what really does enhance our relationship and what helps me see my own passions, my own strengths, and to find out how to become the healthiest version of myself. Does that sound okay?
That sounds great. And you certainly are in a position to do it. Matter of fact, you'll be launching some things that you're doing more full time now because of how much you've spent in the Enneagram, and you've got a number of certifications now in the Enneagram. And we've been places talking to people who speak internationally on the Enneagram who have looked at Danae and said, you've got to be working with people on this because of how much you know and the certifications you already have. So you're going to be going into this in a big way starting in August, and you'll have more that you'll introduce here. But this is really you just taking some time to say to anybody in the Presence audience, hey, if you're interested, check the box and send it back when we send the email out, and you'll do this with them. But believe me, Danae is as qualified as you're going to find anywhere to learn about the Enneagram. And so I thought it would be a great way to introduce this to Presence. So I think it's exciting. Very good.
Why, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Well, we're going to wrap it up for today, and just appreciate so much your hanging in there with us through these 4 episodes on the deceitfulness of good. I hope you learn to love and understand the beauty of who you are in your individuality and how we can grow in our collectives in love and harmony and peace.
Peace out.
Peace out. Bye.